Welcome to Protecting Against Cyberbullying, brought to you by Must Stop Bullying. My name is Brad Snyder, and I'm the Executive Director of the Dion Initiative for Child Wellbeing and Bullying Prevention. You know, all of our kids are spending more time in front of screens in this current era. So it's only natural that we worry about cyberbullying. This webinar is going to be about cyberbullying, how to identify it, and what we can do to prevent it or stop it when it occurs. And I want to start today by talking about exactly what we mean when we say cyberbullying. Well, at its very core, cyberbullying is simply bullying that occurs over a digital device. The CDC gives it a more specific definition, stating it's when students tease, threaten, spread rumors about a victim. And this cyberbullying can take on many different forms. Perhaps we're most familiar with people posting embarrassing videos or slanderous comments or accusations using text or using Facebook or using another social media. And definitely that posting of a hurtful text or media is cyberbullying. But so are texts or videos or messages or emails that threaten harm against a victim or the victim's family or friends. Another form of cyberbullying is creating fake accounts, that is, creating Facebook pages or websites or email accounts where the cyberbully pretends to be the victim. And then as the victim posts hurtful, slanderous, defamatory things that make the victim look bad because of what is being said and done in their name. And finally, and we've seen an increase in this over the last couple of years, there is doxing. Doxing is the practice where a cyberbully will post personal information online about a victim. Will post perhaps their home address, their home telephone number, their mobile number, pictures of them, information about their birthday, their favorite items, friends. All of these forms of cyberbullying, and doxing in particular, appear to be kind of extreme invasions of an individual's privacy. And part of that invasion of privacy is what makes the cyberbullying feel so threatening to victims and to people who are friends or confidants and those who are being cyberbullied. So very quickly, I want to ask a question to everyone here, and that is, which is worse, in-person bullying or cyberbullying? Well, when I ask this question out loud, most people say that the cyberbullying is worse, when in reality, our kids tell us that they experience in-person bullying at greater rates and are oftentimes more afraid of it because of the physical pain that in-person bullying causes. And if I've thought about that, despite the fact that more of our kids experience in-person bullying, whenever I talk to groups, I hear from adults that care about kids, educators, professionals, that the perception is that cyberbullying is worse. And I think that's because the cyberbullying occurs in this space that we can't control. As people that care about kids, at the end of the day, we know how to protect the child from in-person bullying. At the very least, if we had to, we would physically escort them, stand beside them, so that they did not get harmed in the course of the day. We can't do that with cyberbullying. It's happening in this place that we can't see, touch, control. And every time we try to work with a social network to make it bullying or cyberbullying free, our kids leave that social network and go to a different one. We work with Facebook and they go to Instagram. We work with Instagram, they go to Snapchat. We work with Snapchat, they go to TikTok. It always seems that we're behind. Well, I have some good news for you. That despite the fact that, as this statistic shows, that roughly 2/3 or roughly 50% more kids experience in-person bullying in Arizona than do cyberbullying, we now know that these two things are linked. That virtually every incident of cyberbullying is linked to an incident of in-person bullying. And we're going to keep coming back to this over and over again, because we now know that if we can get people to treat each other better in person, the cyberbullying will go away. And let me explain that a little bit, because again, that link between in-person bullying and cyberbullying, well, that was hard for me to fully understand in the beginning. But I was able to talk with kids in research settings about this, and I learned a lot. Our kids, like us, are used to seeing harmful, hurtful things said online. If they go to their favorite YouTube channel, invariably in the comments, somebody will be criticizing that video and criticizing people that like that video. But our kids don't register that as cyberbullying because they don't know the person. It's cyberbullying in the eyes of our young people when the person who is saying something about them knows them. And it's cyberbullying when the people reading what was said about them are people that our kids have to face in person. That is when it rises to the level of cyberbullying. And that is why now the science is telling us that if our kids weren't afraid of what was going to happen to them in person, of how they were going to be treated in person, that the cyberbullying wouldn't matter and would eventually just go away. What are the consequences of cyberbullying? Well, we know that victims of cyberbullying experience decreased academic performance. And again, that has to do with the fact that all cyberbullying is linked to in-person bullying, and all in-person bullying happens at or near schools. So victims of cyberbullying experience a very stark change in their attitude of school, their willingness to go to school, and as a result, their academic performance goes down. It's also the case that we know that victims of cyberbullying experience increased depression and mental health issues clear into adulthood if it's left unchecked. We also know that cyberbullying can be a contributing factor in suicidal behaviors. It's important to note that cyberbullying and bullying do not cause suicides, but they can be a contributing factor in someone's suicidal ideation and behaviors. So what can you do to prevent cyberbullying? Well, there are three interrelated things that you can do to prevent cyberbullying. These things are instructional, and they're about how we teach our kids and what we teach them about cyberbullying. They're physical, and what we can do with our devices to create safer experiences on them. And they're personal, and what we can teach our children about relationships and how to respond when they experience or they witness something that creates dissonance in them. And I'm going to start with what we can do instructionally. First of all, we need to teach our children self-regulation. That is the ability to control their own response to stimuli, their own response to hurtful messages that they might see, to requests that might be made of them online. You see, it's that self-regulation that allows us to use all of our capacities in any given situation. If we don't have self-regulation, we're responding instinctually. We are being impetuous. We are answering, we are providing information, we are reacting. And what we want to be able to do instead of react is to respond. And the difference between react and respond is that thought process. We can only have thought process, especially in stressful situations, if we have self-regulation. The second thing that we need to do is to teach our children online safety. Have we told our children explicitly what information they are allowed to share and not allowed to share? Have we told them what cyberbullying looks like? Have we told them the kind of messages that are inappropriate to send and to receive, and what to do when that information is sent and received? And we're going to get into some of those specific instructions later. But it turns out that too often we expect our children to behave certain ways without ever telling them. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, well, they know better. Well, do they? Do they know better? They don't know better until we tell them. So the first thing that we need to do after we teach self-regulation, if we want to create safe spaces online, spaces that are free of cyberbullying, is to teach our children online safety. And we also need to teach them upstander behavior, which is less about what happens to them and more about what they do when they witness other people being treated poorly online. So we want our children to recognize when they are being asked inappropriate things, when inappropriate things are being said to them. We also want them to recognize when inappropriate things are being said about other people and what they are supposed to do in those instances. In particular, we want two types of behaviors from these kids. When they see somebody else being treated poorly, we want them to know that they shouldn't share that information. They shouldn't forward that email. They shouldn't like that post, and that they need to tell an adult. You know, basically, we want all of our kids asking these questions anytime they go online. Is this information private? It's what I'm being asked to share, to provide. Is it private? Is this post respectful? Not only this post about me, but this post that I'm about to make, this comment that I'm about to make about something that somebody else has said, this response that I'm going to offer to a text in a group setting, in a group text. Is it respectful? Does it match my family's values? We want our child's online behavior to match their real life in-person behaviors, and those should be reflective of our societal and our family's values. We want our kids to use that lens to say, would I say this in person? If not, then I shouldn't be saying it online. Would my family be proud of me for saying this online, in person? If not, I shouldn't be saying it online. Would I be in trouble at school for saying these things in person? If not, then I shouldn't be saying them online. And finally, do I need to stand up for this person? Is what's being said about somebody else something that I need to intervene, make sure that person's okay, and make sure a trusted adult is getting involved? And it can look as simple as this. And I'm going to show now a video from Must Stop Bullying that was created to specifically address the kind of upstander behavior that we expect of kids who witness cyberbullying situations.
You see kids bullied online every day and want to stop it, but how?
Almost hacked into the mainframe. This ends now.
No, you don't have to be a computer hacker to stop cyberbullying. Your words are influential enough to make a difference.
Not cool. Delete this.
Standing up to bullying isn't as hard as you think. Visit muststopbullying.org to learn how.
Again, these videos were created by Must Stop Bullying to help kids understand what's being asked of them, and that we're not looking for some big confrontation or intervention, but rather we're asking them to make smart decisions about what they choose to share and not to share, and not to reward people for posting hurtful things about others. All of these videos and others like it are available at muststopbullying.org, and they're free for you to use in your community to teach community members and kids especially about the kind of behaviors that help prevent and stop bullying and cyberbullying. So physically, there is a lot that we can do to help our devices, with our devices, to protect our kids from the kind of content and the kind of behaviors that are harmful to them. And we're going to be looking at all of these separately, but there are privacy and screen time settings that we can set on our smartphone. There are account settings on both Macs and PCs, and there are browser settings. And I'm choosing to address these. There are other services that can be purchased, but what I want everybody to recognize is that resident on the devices that we own now, that there are tools that come with them that we don't have to spend any money on, that we can leverage out of the box to create better experiences for our kids. So let's look specifically at smartphone and tablets. If you've got an Android device, and any device that's running the Android operating system, there's the Family Link app that you can use to set content restrictions and set the times of days and the amount of time that your kids use on those smartphones. It is recommended that children use smartphones depending on their age, but from the time they start to use it, that they use those devices in public spaces and never at night when they should be sleeping. And you can set those restrictions on your devices so that devices are unavailable during sleep time, and maybe even unavailable when they are not directly supervised by others. You can, in all of those devices, set those. In the Apple iOS, that's done under Settings, Screen Time, and Family. When you first set up your child's device, if you tell both an Android device and the Apple device that you're setting it up for a child, you can create settings those ways that are listed here on the screen, and you can say how much time they can spend on those devices and when they can. In addition, you can set content restrictions so that if they're accessing videos, songs, or other websites, and those websites and content are rated, you can filter based on the ratings of that content. And finally, you can also set certain restrictions about the kind of language that they are allowed to receive on their devices. And while this isn't going to prevent all forms of cyberbullying, it can go far to kind of create some boundaries which make it easier for us as caring adults to monitor what our kids are doing. If we don't have to be monitoring them, for example, at nighttime, when we think or when they should be asleep, it's easier for us to gauge the reactions and actions in response to what they're doing. So like I said, it is a recommendation of all child care professionals that no devices be available during sleep hours. And you can set that on the smartphones and tablets themselves without installing any other apps or buying any other services. Macs and PCs. You can, when you set up your child's account on a Mac or PC, so when you first start a Mac or PC, you can set different user accounts. If you set up your Mac or PC so that your child has his or her own account on that Mac or PC, then you can configure that account. And you can configure that account to do the same thing that the smartphones do. You can set up so that those Macs and PCs are only used for a certain amount of time or during certain windows, and that certain content get blocked. You can also do this directly in the browser. So every major browser lets you as a parent create content filters in that browser. So regardless of who's using that computer at that time, that certain material will be filtered out or only available with a password. And you can do that in any of these browsers. If you go into preferences, it's typically under privacy. And you can set that up to prevent certain language, to prevent certain content from your child being exposed to. Also, you may decide when you're setting the browser up that you limit access to different social media sites so that your child is only accessing other social media that you are comfortable with them using because you've taught them what to expect in that social media site, or because you understand it better. It's not the case that our kids are going to be harmed by only using certain social media. And you need to make sure that your child is ready as you expand into different social media sites. And you can determine which social media sites they see in those browser settings and in your PC and smartphone settings. So the personal things that we need you to do, there is no substitution, no net nanny, no service, no lock that is a substitute for being present in the lives of your child. The kind of behaviors that we are going to explore later that might indicate that they are being a victim of cyberbullying will only be apparent to you if you're present and know what their typical behaviors are. We're only going to notice a change if we know what is normal. Also, when we instruct our children onto what we expect from their devices, what we say to them is far less important than what we are doing. If we are modeling a digital behavior that's obsessive, where we are spending all of our time in front of digital devices, when we are very obsessed with what is being said about and to us on our devices, our children are going to model those behaviors. So even if we try and we instruct them about what we expect, that is going to matter less than if we act the way that we expect them to act. Do we do things like separate ourselves from our devices when we are interacting? Do we have times when our devices are not between us and other people? Do we take meals without our devices and focus instead on the other people in our families? Do we have those kind of healthy boundaries? Because if we don't, then our kids won't either. And this all goes down to the fact that our online relationships are reflections of our in-person relationships. We will only recognize that somebody is being coercive with us online if we know what a positive relationship looks like in reality. So are we teaching and modeling healthy relationship skills to our children in their presence, in the physical world? If they don't know what a good relationship is because they haven't seen it in our homes, they haven't seen us model that and engage them in a positive way, then they are going to be susceptible to coercive relationships online, which is what we don't want. And part of that too is, do they see that our own social media is regulated? Do they see that we are being kind and respectful and not oversharing too much in our own social media presence? So this is what we mean by what we do on a personal level to create a positive digital experience to our kids. So what are the warning signs that our kids might be victims of cyberbullying? Well, the one warning sign is when our kids can't separate themselves from our digital devices. If they aren't able to walk away and they're constantly checking when new messages come in, and not because they're responding. If we notice that this constant checking has a certain anxiety to it, that might be a warning sign that our kid is being cyberbullied. If they can't go without checking, and not because they're in a really in-depth conversation, but because there's clearly an element of anxiety. And again, to go back to the previous slide, we're only going to know that if we're physically present and watching our child's interactions, and if we are present enough to know how our child behaves in normal circumstances. Of course, cyberbullying can create the opposite behavior too, where kids who were very engaged in a digital world are now avoiding digital devices. If our kid who used to like exchanging messages or getting on Instagram and exchanging photos with friends is suddenly and deliberately avoiding them, it might be because they're being cyberbullied. Again, we're only going to notice a change in our child's behavior if we know what their typical behavior is. Somatic illnesses can be a sign that our child is being cyberbullied. If we notice that our child is having headaches, stomach aches, particularly if we are near a school time when they're supposed to be logging in to a class, or if they're going to class in person, if we notice that they are showing these symptoms, and I want to be careful here, we don't have a better term for somatic illness, but the implication is from the term is that the illness isn't real. And what we now know is that the anxiety created by the victimization is felt in a very real way, that the stomach aches, the headaches are felt and experienced as real pain, even though the cause of them might be the stress created by victimization. So I use the term somatic illness because that's what's used in the science, but I think it has the incorrect implication. And because these symptoms are felt in a very real way by kids who are victimized. Also, we will notice a sharp change in attitude towards school. Remember, I said that cyberbullying can reduce school performance, and that comes because kids start to avoid these school environments because that is where the cyberbullying is originating. And that the change in attitude towards school, the change in enthusiasm, the avoidance, all creates a decline in academic performance. So how should you respond if you believe your child is being cyberbullied, or if they told you that they're being cyberbullied? Well, it's a good idea to ask your child what your child thinks should be done. I've been talking with children a lot about this, and I hear over and over again that our kids are often afraid to come to us when they're being cyberbullied because they're afraid that we are going to contribute to the drama, that we are going to act sometimes irrationally, quickly, to defend our children, and that creates the potential to make things worse. So we can demonstrate to our child that we are going to behave rationally by not leaping into action and asking them when they come to us what they think should be done. Oftentimes they know what to do. They just need our support to do the right thing. And we can help them in those moments too. We can actually maybe role play. Hey, so you think you need to report it? Do you know what you're going to say? Well, let's practice what you're going to say. Let's write out what you're going to send. Let's practice if you're going to go to a teacher and share with them the cyberbullying. The other thing that we need to do if our child is being cyberbullied is we need to save the offending material. Now, don't make them save it. And if you can, save it in a way that your child does not have to keep seeing these offending posts. You need to save it in case you need to share it with authorities, but try not to save it in a way that is constantly visible to your child. Now, what's great is that all of these major services, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, they all have on their main screens ways for you to report offensive or cyberbullying behaviors. And when you report it, it will save the post for you in that reporting process. So you don't have to worry about keeping it in a place that will re-traumatize or trigger your child. And absolutely report to the service. If they're getting offensive Snapchats, if they're getting offensive materials in Instagram, cyberbullying materials, hurtful things being said about them, all of these services now very easily right there in the menus for these services allow you to report it. And again, when you do, they will record the offensive material for you. I'm going to recommend reporting it to the school. And I recognize, and there might be teachers watching this and administrators, that this is happening in a place that you don't control. But we now know I've said this several times during this webinar, that all incidents of cyberbullying are linked to incidents of in-person bullying. So the cyberbullying either originated at the school and is a result of something that happened there, and the school will have a clue about who's involved because of the in-person bullying that they're aware of. Or if they're not yet aware of it, the fact that there's cyberbullying occurring is an indicator that the in-person bullying is happening, even if they're not yet aware. So make the school aware, because if the school can address the behavior in person at the school, then the cyberbullying will go away. By the way, it's Arizona state law that the school has to respond to bullying and cyberbullying. It is written in the law that they have to have a bullying prevention plan, and one that makes the parents of victims aware of what's going on. The other thing that I recommend you doing is accessing your parent network and let them know about the cyberbullying. And if you're not the person in your child's grade that knows all the other parents from your child's grade, you know the parent that knows all the other parents from your child's grade. Let them know that the cyberbullying is occurring, because it is somebody in your child's school that's doing it. It is somebody in that community. And the parents will help you figure out who that is and help identify it. And they want to, because environments that allow cyberbullying to occur are incredibly uncomfortable places for everyone, not just the victims. You see, it's the environment that's rewarding the cyberbullying. It's everybody in that email chain that forwards it or laughs at a post and shares it, or likes something and shares it. And all of those people who are liking it and sharing it and encouraging the cyberbully are in the victim's school community. So if we work with the parents of everyone, not just the victim, not just the bully, but those who watched it, we call them bystanders, those who just liked it and shared it, those who didn't act like the girl in the video and said, delete this, we can stop the bullying by getting all of them involved as well. Finally, there are incidents when we need to report to police, and that is when there are threats of physical harm made in the cyberbullying, or when the posts actually depict a crime, and that actually occurs fairly often, where, and I've worked on cases here in Arizona where the cyberbullying was a video that got posted of a kid getting assaulted, and that's what was posted about the kid, and so that needed to be reported to the police. And of course, anytime that a child pornography or is present or depicted needs to be reported to the police. But keep in mind, you know, cyberbullying might be depicting a crime that we don't even think of. It might be an invasion of privacy. The cyberbullying might be posting compromising pictures of the victim, and you recognize that that picture could only be taken if the person was invading my privacy, was on my property, was maybe was accessing devices in my home. So those are ways in which a crime might be depicted in cyberbullying. So that is a lot to cover, and there is so much more to learn, of course, about cyberbullying or bullying. But if you have any questions about what you've seen in this video or comments, I recommend and encourage you to reach out to me at brad@deoninitiative.org, or access any of the excellent materials that are at muststopbullying.org. The website is listed right there. But thank you so much for tuning in.